Welcome back to Solo Spotlight. I'm your host, Ryan McDougall, and today we're getting into a topic a lot of people Google but never talk about out loud: stress, hormones, and fertility. My guest today, Sabrina Souto, an acupuncturist and a comprehensive health practitioner who helps people untangle stress, hormones, and fertility the right way. She doesn't hide behind fluffy, holistic buzzwords. She actually breaks down how your nervous system, your belief systems, and your daily habits are all teaming up either for you or against you. In this conversation, we get into what really happens in an acupuncture session, why natural doesn't automatically mean better, and how nervous system regulation shows up in real life, and why fertility isn't just a women's issue. Guys, we are very much on the hook for this one. We also talk about how our stories, our stress, and even our identities can quietly shape our health without us noticing. If you're dealing with burnout, weird symptoms no one can explain, and you're curious about fertility and hormones without the internet fear mongering, this episode is for you. Before we jump in, do me a favor, hit subscribe, drop a comment with one question you'd love Sabrina to answer in a future episode, and go show her some love on Instagram at Learn with Sabrina Souto. It helps the show a ton, and it keeps bringing you conversations like this. With all that out of the way, this is Solo Spotlight with my guest, Sabrina Souto.
Welcome to Spare Bedroom Studios, where big sounds are born in small rooms.
Sabrina, welcome. How you doing?
I'm great.
Great.
Met your dog.
Yeah, he is a nightmare. He's an absolute nightmare
He's a
sometimes.
fluffy
Yeah.
nightmare. Yeah.
He's a coin flip of whether or not he decides to. Now he's behaving because he has some food, but yeah. I'm really excited. You're the first of a guest that does this type of work in fertility and acupuncture and the type of education and training you have. I I don't tend to do a lot of interviews when it comes to like fertility, but I think it's really important. I think our viewers are gonna get a lot of information out of this, and yeah, I'm really excited because I think this is something that people don't think of too often, and how like holistic care ties into like fertility and hormones, and how like acupuncture and all that, and how that goes hand in hand. So I'm really interested to hear about that. But to start off, just to get to know you and getting the audience to know you a little bit more, uh, how would you like introduce yourself to like someone you haven't met or someone who doesn't know what you do?
So this has evolved over many, many years. So I've been practicing for 20 years, and usually there's a script when it comes to how someone in allied care will introduce themselves. But I have learned to read the room. Okay. And why that's important is a person or a patient's need changes, and I've witnessed it change. So in the past, I would use holistic. I no longer really use that wording. I might have a few places that I bring that word up, but I use comprehensive. So if someone asks, what do you do? My training is in Chinese medicine, and it's a comprehensive way of looking at how the body is interconnected to figure out where the root cause is, how to prevent it, and how to treat chronic conditions.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into talking about holistic care, but do you think it's almost like it kind of set the conversation the wrong foot when you said it, or like there's so many like different notions of it where people kind of like it almost like closes people off because they think like, oh, like it's placebo or something? And is that kind of something that you just had to change the vocabulary?
Yes. Vocabulary is key when it comes to healthcare. You have to know how to communicate to a patient and educate them essentially. And I think when a lot of patients see a practitioner, they are they're looking for, what do I do? What are the answers? Where do I go? My approach is really different. It's an education. It's a conversation. And so the word holistic, maybe about 10 years ago, was like, yeah, that makes sense. A system that's interrelated. And now that word, when people hear it, I would say for better or for worse, there's a stigma that comes along with it.
Right.
Um, I would say people that are very logical or Western based, they hear that word and it is like, just
Yeah.
sounds fluffy and there's nothing to it. And I would say anyone that's in the realm of allied care, they use the word holistic often in a way that doesn't really provide a lot of answers. It's like
Right.
word salad.
Right.
And, people wouldn't expect that I would talk about holistic care in that way,
Right.
but I do.
Right.
I walk the middle ground quite a bit, and I am a proponent of looking at my industries and where all the pros and cons are, especially the cons.
So we talk about like the terminology, and that's really interesting because I think that that's like a misconception of kind of everything that you do is like a lot of it gets waved away or seen as something. But you talk about this like identity and like when you say like this identity shift over time, like how did that journey look like for you in getting to this place? Because I'm sure this isn't like I'm sure when it comes to like health and treatment and stuff like that, there's so many different like paths you can take. And it's interesting that this is where you ended up. Talk to me about how this journey looked like and how it shaped you.
Yeah, so I love science actually. Loved it. Loved physics in school, biology. And I probably would have gone into Western medicine if Chinese medicine didn't kind of land on my lap just as I kind of finished high school. It was about a year or so out. It was my stepfather who said, you know what? I think you should look at this education. And I was don't really know anything about Chinese medicine. But the more I started looking into what the life of a Western medical doctor would be, and that's my thought process. It's not, oh, I want to be a doctor. It was, what would my life look like? And I just knew my personality would not suit it, especially as a general practitioner. Uh, the For one, the time spent with a patient is very minimal. And I like talking to people. I like enjoying conversation and figuring out what's going on. So I thought, okay, I'll take a risk. And I went into school for Chinese medicine. Thankfully, with that education, you learn pharmacology, microbiology, biochemistry. And so there was a lot of science in it, but the schooling just provided a different language and a different way of looking at a system that wasn't common in North America. And I love traveling, and anytime I traveled, it's just commonplace to look at the body in a comprehensive way. Growing up in Canada is not really commonplace at all. So when I saw that, oh, this is the norm, this is a way of really looking at the system from a broad angle, I felt like, okay, this makes sense to me because I like to look at every single angle. And so when I finished school, I did go to China, and that's actually when SARS broke out.
Right.
And that was very interesting. But they have pretty much full integration. So
Right.
you have a stroke, you go and get stabilized. Then in the same ward, you're receiving acupuncture and you're also given herbs. So there's a respect for both
Like types of
both
medicine.
modalities.
Yeah.
There's a respect and understanding that you're good at this, you're good at this, and it's patient centered or patient
Right.
focused. So that was, it was a new thing to see. And at the time when I went into Chinese medicine, it wasn't regulated in Alberta. I was the youngest in my class. I was one of the few Caucasian students. So I learned early on that I really wasn't prepared to, even after my schooling, to really work with patients. And so that was like an internal, wait a minute, I don't think I can start a practice, or I don't even know what I'm doing. I read some books and I did some practicing, but my commitment to helping people was number one.
Right.
So I sought out a mentor, and I worked with him for about 6 years. And he was the one who actually regulated Chinese medicine. He had a Western medical background. And that is where I learned about risk versus benefit. It taught me, he was the wild, wild west of a practitioner. And he taught me basically how to take risks with patients, calculated risks using Western medicine and Eastern. The Tom Baker Cancer Center would refer patients to him all the time. They had all the faith in the world. And so as I learned and observed and worked with patients for not 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour at a time, like hours, I got to see what was important to them, how to communicate effectively. And then from there, I just made a commitment to spend time with each patient. And when you do that, when you're not referencing your books or your knowledge from school, when you're actually working with the human and letting them almost kind of lead the way, you learn. You learn and you learn how to change.
Right.
When I think a lot of practitioners in any industry, there's not a lot of change. It's kind of the same repeat over and
Right.
over and over
A
again.
plus B equals C.
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah. And so when I leave, clinic for the day, I don't go home and say, all right, I'm done. There's my paycheck. I'm like, okay, well, what was that all about? I'll do some research. I'll do some learning. I'll do some pondering, some thinking, some writing down, where I'm like, okay, I've got to figure this out. Because usually, as time has gone on, I'm the last stop for a lot of people.
Right.
So they're coming out of sheer desperation.
Yeah, they like exhausted all of their resources type thing.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know, how does this, like when you look at Western medicine, and I might be jumping forward here, but I'm really interested where, do you find a lot of times there's any, not guardrails, that's not a good term, any technicalities that like someone couldn't come to you, whether that be like insurance and have you seen that evolve over time of like Western medicine being more willing to like accept these type of treatments or?
When I first started, I thought, okay, in like 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to have a way more integrated system. And for a period of time, there was that, but it has looked like it's almost become more separated. And I think that has happened because there's more and more modalities in allied care or alternative medicine. And it's not just Chinese medicine. It's not just a naturopath. It's not just, let's say, massage or chiropractic. There are so many modalities, and it's really hard for anyone to navigate what is beneficial and what's not. So, you know what? We'll just kind of poo-poo everything.
Right.
And
nobody gets.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate because you see that there is a good amount of like case studies that, and it's also like the power of someone's mind. Like it's
Yes.
also like the power of someone's mind to make those changes. But yeah. So when you were in school, what what was kind of taught to you about the job? Because every time you go to college, or they always give you like this is what like the career market looks like. And like, what was that like snapshot for you? Did they give you different types of jobs that you could end up in? Did they say the career field's this big, or was it kind of just we're gonna teach you this and then you're gonna take it from there?
Yes. Yeah. It was very, very risky. There was no, I didn't even, maybe because I was so young at the time, I didn't even think, well, what's the stability in this? How am I going to make this work? I was just, this makes sense to me. This works with my personality. I know that I can help people, and I know that I can provide value in one space. And so no, and there was no really health, insurance coverage for it at the time. And I went kind of blindly into that space because that wasn't my number one focus.
Right.
And so the schooling was very much just let's teach the foundations of what Chinese medicine is. And even in that, right, from my learning, and it's like any education, you only receive so many books
Right.
through your education by so many authors with so many perspectives. So I was given a very small blip into the world of Chinese medicine.
And then you almost had to just learn it
Yeah.
of what you wanted to. Now, when it comes to with Chinese medicine, is there a lot of different like specializations and how, or is it like the path that you're kind of on is like the same that other students would have done?
Good question. This is a complicated one. So Chinese medicine as a whole is basically a theology or a system and a way of looking at how everything is interconnected. And then you're given certain tools to help someone. So one of the tools might be acupuncture. Another tool might be herbs. Another tool is specialized massage or what have you. So there's many tools in the realm of Chinese medicine. And so Chinese medicine is the system, and then you get a tool to use.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Was there any additional training besides mentorship? Was there any, like, when you look at some different career paths, like they have their initial training and then they have like specialty training or like they have further training, was that something you had to like seek out and like kind of take additional courses to kind of get where you're at? Or is it more just worked in experience?
Well, so every year as a part of a regulatory college, we actually have to take post-secondary. We have to
Right.
take extra education. But for me, I don't think I know anyone else that spent 6 years basically
Right.
working at a clinic with a mentor. That education surpassed anything I've ever done. So through that's where he specialized in fertility, which at a time was not a big thing, 20 years ago or so. And he specialized in cancer support. So that's
Right.
why he worked with a Western, medical clinic there. So yes, I would take extra courses and this and that, but I found much more benefit to actually just spending time with a patient.
Right.
It far surpassed any kind of book or course because you can't really get into all the nuances when you're dealing with a human.
Right.
Because then your point A equals point B
Yeah.
equals point C.
And then nobody really feels like they're being heard because it's like, I'm just doing this because you gave me this and like, I'm just figuring it out. Now, I think it's important to talk about like a little acupuncture 101. So you talk about being like a like a comprehensive like treatment. What would someone expect when they're having like a first session with you? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I would say the first session is my specialty. So people are walking in expecting that, okay, we're going to go over your health history and then I'm going to explain acupuncture and then you're going to lay there and then you're going to have a snooze. That's not how I do it. Um, the first session is always at least an hour of conversation.
Right.
And they will give me their medical background, which is important to me. I can read charts and look through everything. But how I discover usually what's going on is through conversation and through what's they're presenting in the room. Whether it's their personality trait or their tones and their and how they're voicing certain things. And so the conversational piece is key because they'll notice through the conversation, I'm not just asking, what's wrong or tell me what's there. I'm providing them education first and foremost. I'm explaining this is how these systems are interrelated. And most of them have never even heard of this concept that your nervous system actually coincides with your circulatory and your immune and your hormone. And I know that sounds very basic, but I usually use storytelling to enhance how it makes sense. But usually when someone presents with an ailment, that's not where the problem is. There is another system usually overriding the problem system. And if I can explain, hey, there's this domino effect that usually takes place, usually their mind will start like, wait a minute. Oh yeah, I did do this or I did do this.
Yeah.
Because most people will come in with the answer of when I ask them, why do you think this is going on? They will say, I don't know. And for me, it's not me telling them what the problem is. It's through conversation, I'm giving them the opportunity to come to their own conclusions and start learning about, wait a minute, and thinking about it. That's way more effective than me saying, well, research shows that A and B and C is this. It doesn't make a lasting impact. I want, whenever I see someone, that if I never see them again, I have provided everything that they possibly need. And so the educational piece is there, usually from an angle they have not heard of. So even in the space of, let's say, hormone health or reproduction health, which isn't really relatable for everybody, there's a subset specialty that's used all around the world, and it's called reproductive immunology, where they focus on the immune system rather than the reproductive system. And for a lot of people, that's very new. That what I'm having hormone problems or testosterone problems.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at the immune system. So that's one piece. And then the second piece is I don't focus on stress. We're designed to actually handle and manage stress. We really are. I focus on someone's belief systems, and that is key. That's key.
When you're vetting a patient, is there like, do you have your own kind of like criteria system to recognize, oh, maybe this isn't like this type of treatment, or like they were here for a different reason and like they're not going to get what they want out of this? Like, is there any red flags that you look for where you almost like have to say like you probably should go to emerge, or like this is more of like a mental health crisis that you're in, and like I don't think this is going to provide you much benefit?
So, good question. I would say for the most part, I fill in a gap. There's always a missing piece that I can fill in, but I won't ask a patient to come back unless they have followed up with a different type of practitioner. that can fill in the next piece appropriately for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll never be, okay, well, I can fix this and then we can, I can see you forever. It's okay, there's a missing piece. I'm going to get you, go to your doctor, ask for this test, ask for this prescription,
Yeah.
or go to your physio, ask for this. I'm fairly well versed in many modalities, so I know where, okay, you need this, and I'm not going to learn how to do it. I'm going to tell you, you go and do this, then you come back to me and we'll see where that changes. So then whatever I can provide you is actually going to be way more effective. There's a certain amount of tension that a person holds when I'm the last stop for them. And it's like throwing a ball against a completely brick wall. No matter what I possibly could do for them, it might even be medication from their doctor or, the right, herb or supplement. It doesn't matter. Nothing could get through if they don't tend to the next step. And usually I can see, okay, that next step is I need you to go and see your psychologist for one session, bring up this, and then come back to me.
Do you find people hit like a turning point, like during your session, do you find that you almost hit this type of energy where you're like, oh, this person's actually starting to believe me? Like, because you talk about it being the last step. And when I see that, like, I would consider someone being more apprehensive or like having maybe like trust issues or like maybe this wasn't their first choice. And then you're walking it through it, maybe it starts to work. Do you ever find like it's over time, like their barriers are lowering? And like, is that something you have to like monitor in real time of like, okay, this person kind of came in a little combative or they think I'm full of shit or whatever it is. And then over time they're like, oh, and you can kind of see like they start to like let it go on their face.
Well, yeah, everybody has a different way of letting go. Sometimes it's through conversation and sometimes it's through touch. And sometimes it's through time. So through conversation, I'll know early on if I can be heard. And the toughest patients are the ones who are super happy all the time. They're just laughing and giggling and laughing and asking me about myself. They're very hard to get through to. And the ones that are really into alternative medicine are really hard to work with, actually.
Like everybody's their own doctor.
Yeah, they tend to love the mysticism of alternative medicine or natural medicine without actually just landing and using some structure to their life. And they're really looking for the magic pill, their magic answer. And I'm not the practitioner for that. And so those are the two most difficult. When someone comes in and is a little bit apprehensive or a little bit angry or put off, they're actually the easiest ones to work with.
Because you can almost build it back up. Like you can almost establish that trust rather than someone who just kind of in their own world.
Yes.
It's interesting because like you would think that you would want people to be like somewhat positive, but sometimes that's almost not a benefit to themselves because with that, it almost like can mask itself in like mania where it's like, oh, this person's just like totally out to lunch. Do you think there's any like big myths about acupuncture? Like, what do you think like the biggest, like someone's scared of needles and then they're like, I can't do acupuncture. Like, what do you think is like a big myth?
Yeah, I think the biggest myth, well, there's two. One is a pro and one is a con. So I'll start with the con is that natural is always better. Okay. And I know that might not even make sense based on your question, but it doesn't mean that acupuncture is going to fix anything or everything. And some people are looking for, okay, it's natural, so it must be good. Um, and that's not always the case, because that acupuncture can turn very much into a passive treatment where you go, you lay down, you receive this treatment, you nap, and you leave. That's, in my opinion, not real healthcare. You're just providing a few biochemical responses and leaving it at that. On the pro piece to it, let's just say, number one, if there's a fear, um, most people have a fear of needles. You have to build a rapport. But very early on, I will just have someone feel what a needle feels like, just to get them through that mental barrier, and then the rest is easy. That piece I'm never worried about, even though they might walk in with that fear.
Right.
Because the type of needles I use are like 0.16 millimeters, or like
Yeah, like you're
they're
barely
like
even
a
feeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
you won't. And that's not the intention for that. But um if you have a skilled practitioner, there is something about acupuncture, besides what all the science and evidence says, that it can raise serotonin and dopamine levels and endorphins and reduce inflammation. That's all just fine. But there's an interesting part of acupuncture, what it tends to do, and they don't really know why, but it's key for me, is that it heightens your senses. Okay. So in British Columbia, they use acupuncture at some of the detox centers there, and it's very commonly used in detox centers in the United States. Um, and so for something like even smoking, people receive acupuncture in their ears, and it will help raise and boost, the different happy hormones in the body, so you don't feel like you want to smoke. Um, but that's not all it does, and they don't understand why. But all of a sudden, y- people will start to smell the smoke more. They're like, "Oh, wait a
Oh.
minute, it doesn't really, this doesn't smell as good." They'll start to taste it more. And when there's a heightened sense or a regular level of sense in your body, you start to become acutely aware of what is good for you and what isn't good for you.
Hitting the factory reset.
Yes.
Yeah, you're almost just like resetting to factory settings.
Yeah. And that's why, if it's done properly, I don't have to solve anything, right?
Mhm.
We will bring up whatever topics need to be talked about, but when you do the acupuncture in conjunction with conversation, because whenever we're feeling something, let's say physically or emotionally, you can't just talk about it. There has to be a physical kind of outlet for it. And whenever you're feeling just that physically, if you just do something physical, it's often not enough. You have to pair conversation with some kind of physical treatment.
And in your experience, how many treatments on average do you think it takes for someone to kind of s- have any like, is it after their first treatment? Is it 4? Is it 6? For you to kind of like, is there any like, meter that you have of like, oh yeah, this is gonna take like 4 or 5 treatments, or
Yeah. So a lot of practitioners will say, well, you have to come for, once a week, every week for the next 3-4 months. I don't do that. I will say we'll do one at a time. I'll see you in 3 weeks, because our sessions are so long that it makes enough of an impact. So, example, let's just say someone's talking about their work, and I can tell, okay, there's a problem here. They're not jiving with their environment. And we could talk through that, but at least they have brought it up and they're aware of it and they're talking about it. After I do a treatment, when it heightens your senses and you go back out into the world, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, maybe my boss isn't that bad.
Mhm.
Or wait a minute, the environment I'm in is it's not right for me.
Mhm.
And when your senses are heightened enough, you start to make better decisions for yourself. Not everything is so clouded.
Mhm.
So when they come back, usually there's been enough of a shift or a change. I'm always shocked that someone's like, you know what? I decided to make some interviews for this. Um, and from there, I have to say, okay, well, you know, we'll do this session. We'll discover what's next. Uh, and most people don't see me for very many sessions.
Mhm.
I'd like at least to see someone maybe 3 or 4 times, and that doesn't sound like a lot, especially in my industry, but if I can make a big enough impact with some of those,
Mhm.
um, and I've provided them tools outside of the treatment room so they don't have to rely on me,
Mhm.
um, because I don't run numerous rooms, right?
Right.
I just have one at a
Right.
time. I want them to get better. I don't want them to come back time and time again. Um, when they participate in their own health, um, sometimes it's 3 or 4 times, and that it might seem wild, but I've worked with people like even in the fertility realm, sometimes when it comes to, let's say, an ailment like pain or headaches or what have you, sometimes people can reason and say, well, it was maybe because of this or this or this or this. But when you have been trying to have a child for 10, 15
There's a
years,
different type of tolerance.
yes.
Like a lot of people live with pain for their whole life and they just think it's normal. But then when you have something like that where it's like almost in some cases like expected to just happen, it's probably like a different. And you probably, it goes without saying that you probably deal with a lot of people that, you know, like emotional turmoil or like, this is a very like fragile moment. Like you're kind of meeting someone at more of like a like end of the road type thing. How do you make sure through your like daily life and your like daily practice, how do you make sure you're like bringing your best self forward? Like, especially when you have a client that's like more emotionally draining, like, is there anything that you do to keep yourself grounded?
Well, first and foremost, I do believe in God. I do believe in a higher power, and so that piece fuels me to know that it's just not me only helping others. There is a guiding force behind that,
Mm.
and so and I'm open about that with everyone I work with. And I have many patients that come from many different belief systems, and we can actually easily meet on common ground with that. Uh, and I find that the more you zoom out and look at bigger picture life, you can actually see what's going on as opposed to blood work, egg, sperm, muscles, tension. When you're so micro, it's very hard. When you're bigger picture,
Mhm.
it's a lot easier. And then the other piece for me is I learned probably maybe almost 10 years ago now um, how to utilize my heart as as a part of this process. And so the brain is something that a lot more research on it, mental health, creativity, thinking, there's all of these pieces that we understand about the mind. Um, but a lot of people think about caring for others.
Mhm.
They think about love because at the end of the day, this is what people are actually looking for, rather than actually feeling it. And there's a lot of research when it comes to how the heart functions. Over time, when you go through different ups and downs in life, the heart the heart tends to break. The heart shuts down. Yes, it pumps blood, but when the heart is affected, not the mind, when you have a broken heart for whatever reason, um, it it doesn't send the appropriate messages to the rest of the body. And that is a cascade effect in how the body regulates itself. So then the mind takes over and it just goes wild when the heart is appropriately functioning, repaired, and at its best, the mind tends to calm itself down. So, when we talk about maybe situations or circumstances being draining, I no longer experience that at all. Because there's this interesting institute. It's called the Heart Math Institute.
Okay.
It's based out of the US, and they do a lot of research on how the heart gives off an electromagnetic wave, and how, when it's properly utilized, the same as a mind would or a stomach would or a muscle would be used, that we'll call it, just in layman's terms, that electricity that the heart gives off tends to be a bioregulator in the body. So I make sure that when I work with someone, even if they're standoffish or they're super nice or there's a really painful story, that I am feeling a sense of care for them. And so when you walk into a room and you can feel everyone's angry or sad or happy or what have you, it's actually what you're feeling is basically that electromagnetic wave that the heart is giving off. So I constantly keep myself in check to not overthink what's happening, and utilize a sensation, almost like a gut instinct. So a lot of CEOs, they talk about this gut instinct, and it's a visceral feeling. That, yeah, those are things that are easy to tap into, but utilizing how the heart functions, which is, I will say, a very new concept for most people, to help regulate my body and have a genuine sense of compassion for whoever I'm working with.
It's interesting because the way you talk, it does require like almost like an enhanced level of like introspection, where you almost need to like have that like self-conscious like almost like self-talk in a way. Now, do you find that's like just in your workplace, or do you find that like you have that knack of like that internal dialogue with yourself?
No, I've had to practice. I've
Yeah.
had to practice. It is a muscle memory. So a lot of people, they talk about meditation or mindfulness. You kind of have to practice that. You actually have to practice um, utilizing the heart. And so there's very simple techniques that would sound just so basic to someone, but as an example, there is this really interesting book out there by Todd Herman, and it's called The Alter Ego Effect. So he's a fellow who worked with Kobe Bryant to form the persona of the Black Mamba.
Right.
And Todd Herman used to live here in Edmonton. And, he was a colleague. We had, many little mini meetings. And he had a dream of working in the States and working with high-level athletes and CEOs. And he went for it and he did it. So he lives in New York and he wrote this book called The Alter Ego Effect. And it's about tapping into a version of yourself that's always been there so you can be at your best. So it's not like you're pretending you're someone you're not. You're actually just tapping into a version of yourself so you can be at your best. And the thought of that, the excitement of it, so even if as a child you pretend you're a superhero, the thought of that, most people can feel over time a sensation in their chest, almost like an excitement, right? Like, yeah, this is cool, this is fun. That exciting piece will almost make the heart feel squishy, like butterfly sensation that we get when you see something cute on TV or what have you. But there's certain ways to access that physical sensation in the heart through practicing. That doesn't have to be about, meditation where it activates the heart in a way that it starts to become second nature.
Mhm.
And so why that's important is that most people, when they are looking for some sort of care, whether it's a physical ailment or fertility or something as serious as cancer, um, you know, for better or for worse, people are looking for um, more love in their life. It just is a fact. There'll be a million stories about why this and this and this happened, but they are looking for that. And most people only know how to access the thought of love. They don't know how to access the feeling and the sensation of it. And that comes in many different ways through, seeing something you love, but also being excited about life again. And most people are not excited about life at all anymore.
Do you think that's evolved? Like, do you think that's more prevalent now in today's day and age of people being more like emotionally neglected?
Yeah, 100%. And it is, um, it's on one level for me, it's painful to watch because you can see in someone's body language, in their tone, in the way they describe things, the look in their eyes, that they are just so far off.
And what do you think the root cause of that is? Do you think it's like something to do with workplace, relationships, like visions of themselves?
So everybody's why is different.
Yeah.
Everybody's why is different, but I would say that most people are so far off the mark from where everyone will come together at end of life. So let me give you an example when it comes to most people end of life. And I've witnessed many people end of life, family and many patients that have had some ailments that it's time for them to leave. Everybody, the same as when a child is born, comes back to the very same things. They want to know what else is out there. Wait a minute, is there something else out there beyond me? Where are my loved ones? I want those people close to me. And have I been able to express my talents in a way that I'm proud of? Okay. And so there are a million ways that we separate from that. And unfortunately now, um, there's so many. There's so many. So it's work, it's family, it's education, it's food, it's there's so many ways. So it's hard for people to come back to like, wait a minute, what is this all about? Because really, in all actuality, it comes down to very simple and basic things that we need. But I would say that where do you start, right? It's kind of like, okay, well, it's everything. Where do you start? And, this might be a vague answer, but it's the truth, is that I have to pay attention to what the person is telling me. I can't, someone might say, oh, it's my job. It's just horrible. And then they might say something about their relationship where their tone changes just ever so slightly, where I'm like, wait a minute, there's something else there. And so I have to pay attention to what they're actually saying rather than the big three: work, home, health.
Right.
Yeah.
It is interesting. It's interesting too that you have to kind of get attuned to that sense of like spotting that, because a lot of times I'm sure that like it's easy to say like, oh, my workplace is this, but then they don't talk about the fact of like well, they might feel like they're not doing their part at home. And then they might feel that they're not succeeding in a side project, or they're having trouble with their kids. Or so then it becomes this culmination of like, well, yeah, you say it's work, but that might be like 20% of where all of this like stressor is coming from. And really, you wouldn't go and have such a shit day at work if like some of these were kind of like tweaked a bit. And even just to have that like skill of being able to read that is, because even with my job, like it's a lot of that too, where it's like, are you mad because you're not like getting this or you're not getting that? Or like, do you feel like really pissed off because like someone's taking like your autonomy away? And then you have to say like, that does really suck. And like, I'm sorry that's happening to you, but like, here's why. It's to keep people safe. It's this, that, and kind of like addressing it and like hitting the nail on the head and being like, no, that's actually what it is. A lot of people can kind of take like a breath of fresh air and go, yeah, all right. Like, you know what? Like, you're right. And it is very interesting because you kind of have to be a little bit more like, do you find like you have to be like more like realistic with people? Like sometimes the idea of like keeping people grounded in reality is like actually like a legitimate thing you have to do, and be like, no, it's actually this. And then like, ah, right, you know what? You're right.
Yeah, well, yes. You know, sometimes it's not my favorite thing to do, but I would say I'm maybe more so known for having difficult conversations. And so, you know, I would say those difficult conversations come much easier with patients I've seen for the first time than they come from working with someone maybe for an extended period of time. And the reason I will separate those two is sometimes I know that it is too much for me to say A, B, and C to this person. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. And then eventually when I bring it up, you know what? Sometimes it really just doesn't go well. So I'll give you an example of a patient who she came in, she was in her mid 30s, and she walked in just beautiful, beautiful uh, clothing and hair. Everything looked great. And she was coming in because she had a cancer diagnosis. So she was going through treatments, and she heard about me through a friend and wanted some support for, her immune system while she was going through things. And the whole time in that whole session, the first half an hour, her presence was just, I'm better than you. Um, and I'm just like, oh, like it didn't even matter what she said and what she didn't say. And I was like, well, now what do I have to do with this? And this skill set is, we learn in Chinese medicine about different personalities, different sounds, all of these things. But sometimes we don't learn what to actually do with that, right?
Right.
And so I've learned through trial and error how to communicate. But why this particular story was so important is because I knew that she had this persona that, based on my experience, it wouldn't matter how much chemo, how many surgeries, how many herbs or acupuncture or wellness retreats she did. It was like there was a barrier. Nothing was getting in, even though she presented like she was well spoken. And I said, so I finally mustered up enough courage, and I said, okay, well, here we go. I'm gonna have to say something. Like, how do you say something to someone you've known for 30 minutes? Like, hey, you're actually better than me. But I learned how to eloquently discuss this with her. And she was like, huh, when I was a teenager, my sister, she taught me how to act better than people because I was getting bullied all the time. And I'm like, oh yeah, that would really work. As a teenager, I'm like, yeah, that would really work. And she's like, and she genuinely had an aha moment. She was like, wait a minute, I guess I've acted like that ever since. I said, yeah. And I'm like, the reason I'm saying it, and I explain it kind of like I was explaining to you, um, we might think it's just black and white. You take this and it works. I said, but there's a way that, things get into your system and you assimilate them. And so she pondered that for a bit, and she said, okay, yeah. She didn't spiral and say, well, that happened to me because of this, this, and this, and I'm the way I am.
Yeah,
And
they like double down.
yeah, she didn't. She took it, she swallowed it. I was shocked. And she walked out. 3 weeks later, she came back, completely different person. She didn't go to years of counseling to figure it out, and she didn't spiral out of control. Completely different person. She never presented like that again.
Hmm.
And we'll never know, but thankfully, she's just fine to this day.
Yeah.
Everything, there's every system is different, and you wouldn't think that as a practitioner that might be important. Maybe a practitioner thinks, oh wow, this person is kind of just a bit much. I'll just get through this and we'll say goodbye. But for me, I'm like, I have to pay attention to what someone's showing me.
Mhm.
And sometimes those conversations are uncomfortable. Sometimes they're absolutely mind-blowing, where you can tell the room is standing still and someone just is like, oh, okay. Yeah.
And it almost gives you a level of like fulfillment too, to know like, oh, that's like that's what I was trying to like, almost like, oh, like I made like this like big change in someone's life that I like, and hopefully she can continue to like grow from here. And like maybe if I didn't have that conversation, like she would have just been spinning her tires for however long, right? And it is it is very interesting how a simple conversation can almost like make like landslides for people,
Yeah.
where you just like, and I think it is to be said that like it doesn't always work. Like there's a lot of people where it's like they haven't got there yet. Now, when you come to a situation like that, do you find like that is kind of just as like potent for you in terms of like understanding that for yourself? Because like some people, like they don't get the desired outcome and then they're like, I don't understand why this person doesn't get it, or like and like I'm there, I'm with them, and I have all this feeling and emotion, and like I'm really here in the moment with them, and like they're basically still telling me like, yeah,
Well, I have the privilege of now practicing for over 20 years. So I know that when I've had certain conversations with patients, I know I haven't been the first one to say
Mm.
it. And I just said it in a way where it actually landed and I was the tipping point.
right,
So in a sense, I get to benefit from everything that's come before.
right,
And I know in certain situations where I have maybe been the first.
right,
And I know I'm truly coming from the heart, and I'm like, okay, that if it's not landing, it will eventually build. And I've had numerous patients come back, even some I'm sorry letters, to say, I'm sorry. I realized that I didn't understand kind of what you were saying or where you were going with things at the time, but I understand now. Now, I'm not saying I'm right about everything, but I know that there's two routes. I mean, and so if it doesn't always land in the way I wanted to, I know at least I had enough courage to not string them along
right,
and say, okay, well, you come back and we won't talk about the elephant in the room. I'll just leave it and someone else can deal with that.
right,
It's almost like, and I've always had this philosophy, if you're aware of something, it's your responsibility to do something about it.
yeah, Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. And you, if you don't, you're just doing a disservice to them. Where
Yeah.
and a lot of times you'd be surprised how many people like genuinely just weren't aware that they were doing a certain or acting a certain way. And like it, I think without getting off into a tangent, I think you start to see that in because people are very fearful of, oh, what's going to be the outcome of this? If I say this, and is this going to lead into something? Are they going to pull like, are they going to pull the race card? Are they going to say it's because I'm a male or a female? Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? And like, what kind of string am I pulling? So it's very like courageous of you to be able to kind of have those realistic conversations because I think a lot of time the reason people don't do it is based on like fear because they're just scared. They're like, you're trying to protect your own livelihood, you're trying to protect your own like backyard, and you're like, this might not be taken the right way, and they might not. But sometimes you have to just kind of like shoot it from the hip, right? Like, and it it probably came with that experience, right? Like that 20 years of experience you're talking about where, you know, you kind of like you just have to be like, okay,
Oh yeah, and I mean in the past I've had to apologize to patients.
right.
I have. I've had to, and that's like, one of the biggest things that practitioners don't recognize, that we're human too and we make mistakes, and apologizing to anytime I've ever had to apologize to a patient, it has always been for the best. We have developed an even deeper bond where I'm
Right.
like, yeah, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have said it this way. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
But I'm in your corner, and this is where I'm trying to help you get to.
Yeah.
But it is those there's I can even think of a handful of patients. They helped me learn, because I've worked with a lot of like medical doctors as well.
Right.
And those medical doctors as patients, they have such a barrier up of their persona
Mhm.
that they don't want anyone knowing their stuff. And so one doctor in particular I worked with who um I had to apologize to, and through that she really showed me um the vast it might seem obvious to other people, but the vast human side to certain medical professionals that are just so deeply hidden, and you have to walk through it with more fragility
Mhm.
than even the average person.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like, there's just like a whole level of different things and trained and kind of like dialed in mechanics that, yeah, it's definitely something where you find that those professions, and I think a lot of it is like trauma too. Like you're seeing so much, I think with a lot of those emergency response or like dealing with like people in crisis, like people have like their own threshold for like what they can handle and how they like cope with that stress, right? And it's definitely something where yeah, you have to handle it in a different way because it's not necessarily like it's it's something that's not like quote unquote like no, not normal, but it's like what they're experiencing isn't really things that the normal average day person is experiencing. So like the way people think, or like maybe it's like a morbid level of thinking, or like you're losing your sense of like losing your sense of like value in life or whatever it is. It's like those
Mhm.
things you kind of have to address in a different way because like it's it's not like you're just dealing with like the average person. And it is very interesting because I think like the medical profession, uh it has a lot of that, and same with like police and same with paramedics where
Mhm.
I think how do you handle someone trauma, how do you handle somebody's trauma when like they're like responding to just people dying all the time, and you're like, that's like a special level of like treatment that person's going to require, because it's like for them to like dig that up, it's like that would cripple anybody, like anybody else that didn't work in that profession, like that would send them into like some serious trauma.
Well, that's why, it brings me back to just what I was chatting about before, even though it might sound like such a new concept. When we talk about trauma, it really is that your heart's gone into a state of shock.
Mm-hmm.
Your heart shocks, it shuts down. Yeah, it will still pump blood, but it's like mini micro shocks where eventually you are just kind of a logical robot.
Yeah.
And to get you back to, wait a minute, I still can access this piece,
Mm-hmm.
repair this piece, and still function at a high level. I think, I would hope, is a skill set that in the next 10, 15 years, people are going to start to look at. Because when you're in here, you're very robotic.
Mm-hmm.
And it tends to create almost like a dissociation from,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
from
Yeah.
a dissociation. And so it is, I'm not always looking at what's wrong either. Sometimes I have to find what's right
Yeah.
and then roll with that and start building on that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, you start to look at what's right, then sometimes what's wrong tends to just fizzle out.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a chess game. It really
Yeah,
is.
it's
You
like
have to know which pawn to move next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very, very interesting. Now, when it comes to like Chinese medicine and like we talk about vetting of clients, like when you look at people in like emergency response or like law enforcement or that type of field, is there like a different approach, or is there like a different like starting point?
Yeah, it was odd. About a year ago, and none of them were referred by each other. For a period of time, I saw a lot of, it was men in law enforcement,
First responders.
military, first responders, but also like detectives. Like
Right.
I saw a large group, and what I got to see through that is actually everyone was quite different.
Yeah.
Everyone was quite different. I would have expected that there would have been a certain personality, but um, they all had that level of overly logical thinking, where they almost were yearning for something beyond that. I would have expected that they would all, with the exception of maybe one, been like, yeah, my wife made me come here. Was told to come here, where it was all logical. But because when you're in that state all the time, by nature, you actually don't want to be in that state all the
Yeah.
time. So there was like a level of um, ease of conversation that I
Yeah.
could have after I talked about all the logical things, so they felt safe. That there was,
You had like the guardrails go down.
yeah. So I actually find, like it's what I said earlier, that sometimes the most standoffish are actually the easiest to work with.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like they have been so separated from just their, I don't know if you want to call it, might sound cheesy, but their like childlike nature,
Mm-hmm.
that they are longing for some kind of recalibration back to that.
Mm-hmm.
That once you kind of just discover a little bit more, it's much easier.
Do you ever? I always ask people, like, usually in my workplace, but like, do you ever have to have the conversation with people and say, is this who you are, or is this like the person you're trying to be, or is this like the facade? Are you actually like this, or are you don't got to do this? You know what I mean? And like, I get it. You might be playing a role because you're a cop and you're kind of like imitating like that mentality or whatever. But are you actually like this when you're with your buddies having a drink? Or is this just like something you're playing up because it's like a protective like layer almost? And like, how do you bridge that gap to be like, it's okay to cut the act?
Well, so I will never be as blunt as that.
No.
So there is like a finesse to it where people have to hear themselves talk about where they're at. I find the more someone can hear themselves talk about where they're at, it's a lot easier to make kind of shifts in the body. And so that's where the acupuncture comes into play. I was talking about it heightens your senses. Besides all the science, it heightens your senses to the point of like, just imagine you go on a vacation, right? You're away from everything. When we go on vacation, when we're away from everything, usually we're like, oh, wait a minute. What's life really all about? I need to make some changes or what have you.
Right.
And so I will set them up with enough success and tools that when they leave, like again, example, that book I was talking about, where it feels a little bit, if they're willing to go on it, an adventure. Not, well, I'm crappy, or yes, have this persona. It's, wait a minute, I can kind of see the writing on the wall a little bit more. Wait a minute, I can make some adjustments just by utilizing some of these tools that CEOs use. And then I'll probably suggest, it depends on the person. I'm like, you know what, go to the health food store, because I don't sell anything from the clinic. I just work with people and we do acupuncture, and I've made a very conscious choice not to do that. But I know that there's certain micronutrients that can be missing for people, where I make it easy. I'm like, okay, well, this is the food I want you to add in, or this is this that I want you to add. It's usually one or two things, or use this because it'll help raise your dopamine. That, again, it's a bit of a chess game where eventually, whether that's a session or two, there's a recognition that, okay, the way I've been doing things really just doesn't work for me anymore.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that they can't have certain parts of their personality that are, maybe not the best all the time. We all have that, myself included. But there's always a shift in someone's eyes. I can tell when they come back in, where I'm like, all right,
they're getting it.
yeah, they're getting it. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say that, unless I feel like someone like that woman, she's dealing with a potential like a terminal illness.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about you acting like you're better than people.
Yeah.
Like, really, just to water it down. I was like, oh, okay, I got to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a certain finesse.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you definitely have to like approach it in like a strategic way with some tact to it. I want to branch off because I think this is very important, and I don't want to lose time not talking about it. But when we talk about like the specialty area of fertility, when you're dealing with these cases, what are like the first things that you're trying to do or have your clients understand when it comes to like holistic health and fertility and acupuncture?
Yeah. Almost circling back to one of the first things is about how the immune system actually significantly plays a role in how the body regulates the reproductive system. It goes hand in hand, and there are many clinics around the world that have recognized that for a long time. And so once they understand, like, wait a minute, I don't have to just chase these labs and look at this. I can kind of zoom out and say, okay, there is a correlation between these systems. And the immune system is one that there are many ways to adjust how the immune system works.
Right.
And so that's number one. Number two, everyone talks about stress, right? Being a huge factor in how body responds to our reproductive system. Because reproductively, when you're in fight or flight all the time, your body is thinking on a last ditch effort, I need to reproduce. We're thinking we need to pay attention to everything else. So a lot of that, people will say, well, you're stressed, so do this, and this. But again, it's not the stress. It's the belief system that goes along with why they're feeling so much chaos in their world.
Right.
And that is something that plays a significant role. And I would say, the fact is that most people that come see me, they're in a partnership or a marriage. And usually there is always something that needs to be tended to there. It's not just one person has the issue or the other person has the issue. There is something that could be tended to. And not everybody, but there are a lot of nuances
Right.
that happen in relationships and marriages that tend to kind of shut down the body for a plethora of reasons when there's stress at home.
And do you find it's like a mix of male and female clients when it comes to like fertility, or do you find like it's specifically women?
Yeah, so for a long time, women have been the ones that have been looked at. And I would say about maybe 8 years ago, I was like, wait a minute. And that's not even that long ago. I was, wait a minute, something's not adding up here. And the men would only come to the appointments if they happened to give a ride, or, they would come and say, oh, well, my tests show everything is okay. And so I know for a fact that men's health is the next frontier, because there just simply isn't enough testing. There isn't enough science behind it, especially in Canada. But that is the next frontier to look at, because you have to think about it. For a woman, when we're trying to build a family, we have so many pieces helping to contribute. We have the hormones, we have the lining, we have the egg, we have, quite a few different factors supporting the growth of an embryo. But for men, they have one specialized cell, one that has to swim along and do the work to help replicate half of that embryo. That cell, that sperm cell, better be in order to help support everything it has to do. And I think just logically, if you look at it, either science hasn't caught up, or we just kind of missed the mark. That men's health I would say even men's health in general has always been on the last page, right? And I think that's probably for numerous reasons, but yeah, men's health is definitely not looked at the way it should be.
I think that's really important, and especially to our audience, that I think the majority of our audience is male. Nonetheless, like I think too, it's the willingness to like go and talk about. Like, I think a lot of times it's like I don't know if this is like, because a lot of times people just say, oh, like fertility, that's like females. And I think it's like the idea of, especially when it comes to like, men in general, like a lot of times it's like the temperaments of like dealing with it and not, even when it comes to pain or fertility or whatever it is, it's like, I'll just deal with it in a house. It's fine. Like, don't worry. But I feel like the actually getting the ability to address it, then that kind of like snowballs into the ability to study it more and create more like medical evidence and testing and this and that.
Well, you know what the interesting thing is about men is they actually respond much faster than women. I need to see them much less. And we don't always have the deep conversation, actually. And this is why I've had to learn to introduce different resources, because men don't always want to talk about everything. They actually do much better with the physical treatment of acupuncture. Women want to talk about everything, and they're fine with acupuncture, but men not so much. And so that's why some of those resources I was talking about, that alter ego effect, I would say almost every man gets super stoked when I talk about Kobe Bryant, right? And the Black Mamba. And, even when I explain from a standpoint, like, look at hockey players. They are designed to deal with high amounts of stress, okay? And if someone goes on the ice and totally craps the bed in their game, and they get off and everyone's chirping at them, telling them like, you suck, you shouldn't be playing, da 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 da. If there's even a small part of themselves that believes that to be true, regardless of all the years of training, the next time they get on the ice, their body will just become discombobulated. They won't even be able to function because that belief system is sending a deep message to like, no, you can't function. And so when I use those angles to, bridge the gap, yeah, that logically makes sense. Okay, I understand how that can work. And when you look at using some resources like a podcast or an ebook that's designed in a way to actually make change, it's like giving them enough medicine. They don't need to come back and see me a million times. If they're going to participate, all you have to do, throw this audio on and you're like, wait a minute. Yeah, I can access another part of myself that when you access this, let's say this other persona that you're excited about, it sets a biochemical response in the body that actually helps regulate the body.
That's interesting.
And so I don't come at it like, lay down, let's do acupuncture. I'm like, how can I get your body to regulate itself in a way that works for you?
Right.
And men are very different, yes, than women. But I've had to learn that as well.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Kind of landing the plane here from this amazing conversation. I just want to start off with saying thank you for making the time today to have this conversation. I think it's very beneficial, and I know the viewers and listeners are going to get a lot out of this. But just to kind of wrap up with some little rapid fire questions. What do you think one wellness trend right now is like overhyped?
What is overhyped? This is gonna sound, it is, I mean, I think a lot of wellness trends are overhyped. I think a lot of wellness trends are overhyped, and I would tell people to be really careful with click buying supplements online, because most of them, it's just brilliant marketing.
Right.
Every time I take a look at, well, what, man, that sounds amazing.
Snake oils.
They figured something out. And then I'm like, hey, what are the ingredients? I was like, wow, they really went for it. They really blew it up.
Well, right now it's like I know one that's going around in like the Rogan sphere, they call it, is like this blue scorpion. It's like some kind of like scorpion venom or something like that. But yeah, apparently it's like all placebo.
Yeah, so this is the thing. I don't know a ton about that, but what I do know is in in homeopathic care, and even in like traditional Chinese medicine care, they use these micro dosages of these types of things to help deal with more serious ailments. But again, sometimes we don't need to be so extreme. There are some simple, basic things. Like even one of the things I recommend to people that they can get, especially in Edmonton and Calgary, is there's this brand called Evolution. They are an olive oil brand. That's all they sell is olive oil, and it's pressed virgin olive oil. There's many places around town. Sounds simple, but if you can get an actually legit, because there's a lot of food fraud with olive oil, a legit olive oil, and I would say you go to them. Um, just integrating like a shot of olive oil, because most of us don't get enough oils,
Mhm.
um, can be enough to help significantly calm down inflammatory responses in the body.
Hmm.
And it's simple. It's simple. But I say anything that looks shiny and bright and new and wild, I would usually, it'll pass. It will
Yeah.
pass. I've seen it so many times. It'll pass.
And where can people find you online to learn more about holistic health, fertility, acupuncture?
So I will be the first to admit I am the worst with online presence. Um, and the reason for that is I just spend all my time in the treatment room and
Mhm.
pondering everything. So I'm not overly active, but my Instagram, is learn with Sabrina Souto. I tend to like LinkedIn.
Mhm.
So Sabrina Souto on LinkedIn. And then my website that needs a mega update is Fertility.
Yeah.
Mega update. But, finding me in those platforms is sometimes hard. Um, uh, I'm, I would say yes, I appreciate any inquiries, but, um, I, I'm really here, for the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
No, and again, we'll attach your socials and everything. You do
Yeah,
have
sure.
some information there, but yeah, by all means, that definitely makes sense. You're focusing your time on the clients and figuring out the best way to deal with that.
Yeah.
So
I wish I could take this conversation and make it into like a whole bunch of social media, but and with the podcast for sure, but it's much easier for me to connect with people
mhm.
this way
Yeah,
than it is trying to figure out how to write something
yeah,
on a website.
of course.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to connect with you, and I can't wait to have you on for a follow-up episode maybe in the near future, see how everything's going and continue this conversation.
Cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we probably could have talked for hours.
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
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 Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you. With that, that has been another episode of Solo Spotlight. Don't forget to like, subscribe on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, clips daily, episodes weekly, and liking the video, giving us a subscribe, put in the comments. What do you think? What do you have any questions for Sabrina? Is there any misconceptions you have about holistic health? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear it, and supporting this show continues to allow us to have thoughtful conversations like this every week. And with that, we'll see you for another episode in the following week.